As the host of Neutralize the Mama Trauma podcast, I am delighted to be able to bring you this podcast. My name is Wendy Lopez, and I would like to introduce myself to you. I specialize in helping people overcome their emotional blocks through different techniques, through emotional empowerment coaching and compassionate healing light facilitation. As a mom who has experienced narcissistic trauma, I help moms eradicate self-doubt in order to regain self-confidence to elevate their status both at home and at work. In our podcast, we discuss people's struggles, triumphs, and failures. We dive deeper into self-love, self-compassion, self-acceptance, and mindful, holistic tips. In every episode, I hope that you can take a golden nugget of advice and apply it to the journey of motherhood in order to raise your level of awareness. Welcome to Neutralize the Mama Trauma podcast, where you find healing and creative mental thought advice from experts on past pain, narcissistic experience, and trauma. Today, our guest is Melissa Giller. She is a certified and spiritual coach, business consultant, MBA included, and mentor to women who desire more out of their big, beautiful life. She's a wife to one, mom to two, and a deep thinker and a big feeler. Melissa believes that all women deserve a life of connection, alignment, and joy. On the airwaves, she's the host of Life with Soul, the podcast, which she just launched in May 2022. So as we have Melissa today, and we're on the Mama Trauma podcast, I invite everybody to check out her podcast. Again, her podcast is Life with Soul. So as we have Melissa, I just want to say that Melissa was in my Soul Mama Summit, and I really enjoyed her presence. I enjoyed what she brought to our guests, to our audience in the Soul Mama Summit to neutralize the mama trauma. Today, as we have her as a guest in the podcast, we're going to be speaking a little more in depth about her story and how she got started in her business, and along the way, how the universe intervened for her to be aligned and invited her to the right direction. And I think as moms, we have a tendency of feeling lost if we have experienced any type of trauma in mommyhood. So, Melissa, would you like to tell us what your experience was juggling mommyhood, any type of trauma that you had to get to where you are today?
For sure. Where do I even start?
Yes, I
know. So I think for just background information, my kids are currently 6 and almost 4. So I've been a mom now for 6 years, and I'm 37 years old. So in my 20s, I was really the high achieving goal getter, work hard, play hard kind of person. And that served me well until a point. But it wasn't until I became a mother where I started to realize, you know what, this isn't high achieving. It's more like high anxiety. It's just a lot of pressure. It's a lot of emotional perfectionism, and pushing through pain, hustle and grind, and really living my life in a more masculine way, which served me well. That ticked off a lot of boxes. I got a lot of gold stars for that kind of behavior. And then when I became that mom 6 years ago, it caught up with me. And all of a sudden, the job that I was doing in terms of caretaking didn't feel valuable. It wasn't recognized as valuable by society. And I felt incredibly isolated and unsupported and lost. And this was all before the pandemic in terms of being isolated. So in terms of other kind of background, I'm in Canada, in Winnipeg, Canada, where it can be incredibly cold. It can be as cold as Mars in the winter. I kid you not, like it's been studied. So both of my babies were born in winter months. So there's not a lot of leaving the house. And
Mm.
both births were of a very traumatic nature for me. So my first was a 36-hour labor that ended in an emergency C-section due to crashed heart rate and, troubles with the baby. All was fine, but it wasn't anything that I expected, and it wasn't anything I had prepared for. And I carried a lot of, again, that pressure into having the ideal birth, and this kind of idea that, like, well, I don't want to have an emergency procedure, so therefore I won't. Like, I don't know where I thought I had that kind of control, but I think I lived my life with such a tight grip on control up until that point. And I feel like in motherhood, you start to realize you have no control, none, in so many ways. And it just gets more and more as they get older, right? But anyways, I had him, he had colic. It was a really tough time. And I ultimately decided to quit my consulting job. I was working for a big four firm, global firm. You definitely know the name. And I just decided I didn't want to work 60-hour weeks. I didn't want to travel. I wanted to put my focus on the home front. But I also made that decision because I was told that it would be the good mom choice. Again, pressure, expectations, and not really listening to what I needed. And what I needed was a little bit of a combination. It wasn't that I needed a 60-hour work week, but I also wasn't ready to be a full-on stay-at-home parent. That was not me. So I started working virtually teaching, but I got pregnant again. And unfortunately, in this pregnancy, I was really sick. I threw up the entire time, start to finish, even in labor. So I didn't gain a lot of weight, and I was lucky I was never hospitalized or needed to be, put on an IV or something of that nature, because some women can get so sick. But it was more this slow whittling away of my physical health, my mental health, my emotional health. Like, and my 2-year-old had stopped napping. So I was like constantly physically sick, tired and drained, dealing with a 2-year-old of which I had zero kind of training. I'm now, all my shit's coming up, and I'm starting to like, oh God, okay, I need to deal with this aspect of myself because I don't want to pass this on to him, or I don't want to go through another day yelling all day. Like, I can't feel this way, but I felt so tapped out because of the pregnancy. So once that baby was born, which was again a attempted VBAC, well, it was a VBAC, but assisted with forceps, an emergency, got to emergency again. My epidural never worked in that labor.
I've had that before.
Yeah. And then all of the, I really struggled for that whole pregnancy of whether I was going to have a planned cesarean or not. And I decided not to, but it really didn't go well again. And I felt even worse than I had after that second birth. Not to mention, my husband and I had an argument in the birth, like, after that whole thing. Him and my mom had an argument, which turned into him and I having an argument, and it was such a rough time. But that day, it's like the day my daughter was born, I hold kind of two camps on it. It was one of the greatest days of my life and one of the worst days of my life, which I would never take back, but I have to now live with the pieces that made it the worst day of my life, right? And what did I do? I shoved it all down. I just shoved it down and carried on, because what choice do you have? I had a baby, I had a toddler, I had a house to maintain, I had an appearance to keep up. I had to be the good, perfect mom. And then my foot broke. It literally broke because of all the pressure I was walking around with at 5 months postpartum. my foot broke.
Oh.
And that changed everything. I mean, I was now in a boot for 6 weeks. I had a 2-story house. My baby had to nap in our main floor laundry room during
Mm-hmm.
the day because I really couldn't do stairs well. I had to ask for help in so many ways above and beyond where I already needed help. And it just was, I wasn't dealing with it very well. So it led to a lot of anxiety, which culminated in a massive panic attack in the fall of 2019. And
Mm.
I know I kind of keep saying this was the day that changed my life, but really that was the day that changed my life.
Right.
And I say it because I'm so grateful for that day. It
Mm-hmm.
changed my life for the better. It was the absolute kick in the pants that I
Mm-hmm.
needed. And I do feel that it was the universe shaking me by the shoulders. There was nothing wrong with me. Like I've been tested. There's literally nothing medically happened. It was
Mm-hmm.
all emotional, mental. Um, and I just realized that it's like, I can't keep living this way. And I have no outlet. I have no
Mm-hmm.
joy other than these kids and kind of keeping up this life that I said I wanted. Right. And
Mm-hmm.
so that was the day that really prompted my healing journey, which I can get into as well if that's of interest. And I mean, that'll segue into how I started the work I was doing. But
Mm-hmm.
without that event, I don't know where I'd be today. Maybe I would have just kept going, or I don't know.
Right. So after you had that breakage in your foot, were you planning on returning back to work?
I
Or
didn't
was
know what that would look like. Yeah, like
Mhm.
I definitely was because I knew that okay, I've been at home for a while
Mhm.
now and I'm missing, this outlet, but I wasn't sure what that would look like for me,
Mhm.
except for the fact that deep down, I'd always wanted to work for myself and
Mhm.
to to have my own kind of business life integration that just worked together and supported each other and that I felt proud of.
Mhm. Right. So being a mom, having the what did you say, 2-year-old at that time, and then the
Yeah.
infant? Okay.
Yeah.
And then having the trauma of birth and then internally suppressing everything. What when did you make the decision that you needed to take care of you?
That afternoon so I'll tell you
Mm.
what happened when we phoned 911 because I didn't know what was happening. Like I didn't know this is a panic attack. I'd never had one before. I thought I was having a heart attack. Like I
Oh,
thought I
okay.
lost all of the breath in my body. So just for reference, I was laying on my bed and I'd gotten out of the shower, so I didn't have
Okay.
clothes on. I
Mhm.
saw like my stomach concave and my chest concave and my hands closed up and all my cheeks sucked in. It was like all the breath just left my body.
Oh, that I'm
It
glad you're
was,
explaining that because it
yeah,
could
it
be where
was
someone experiences that.
right.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so if that is happening, just return to your breath, remember to breathe. And so my husband was on the line with 911 and I did eventually, get that breath back. It has to kind of come back. Um and they sent, an ambulance anyways to check my vitals and
Mhm.
just make
Mhm.
sure that this wasn't something else. And the paramedic, he looked around the room and he said, this looks a lot like my house. My wife had a baby about 6 months ago, and he looked at, the monitor and the books and the disarray and just all the things around. And he said, we see this all the time. And
Wow.
that stuck with me. And that's where I said, like, this can't be normal. I don't want this to be normal. Like, of all the yearnings we have to just be normal and fit in, I'm like, I don't want people to be like this. Like, that's awful. And so that was the day that I said, okay, well, yeah, no more. And I got into therapy. I got into cognitive behavioral, so CBT, really started to understand the runaway thoughts, the negative thoughts that even caused that panic attack because they were really thought based. There's something wrong with me. That was a thought that kept like something's wrong, and I fed into that and panicked. But I just started noticing how these negative thoughts affected my marriage, affected my parenting, affected how I felt about myself. And so that was some of the deepest work that I had really ever done up until that point, was really starting to understand these thoughts. And it was like almost like a night and day difference when I really grasped it and I could call myself on it. And instead of judging, I just said like, oh, you're doing that. And it's okay. That's your brain's way of protecting you, staying safe and comfortable. We think these ways because that's what we know and feel safe in, right? And it feels uncomfortable to challenge that. That's where we grow. So yeah, I underwent birth trauma healing. I saw a healer in that department specifically for a couple of sessions and really addressed all that had happened. I underwent shamanic healing, Reiki, and I fell into Kundalini yoga and meditation and really just started putting my soul care first.
Yes. See, so this is what I want the moms to know is I want to go back to what the paramedics said, that is something that they see all the time, and it's kind of like a normal. And that is why the podcast and the summit is available, that is not normal.
No.
And the beauty that, I feel so touched at the beauty that you felt within you, because there's beauty in you. It's your soul that led you to look for that help. Like you said, you did the cognitive part, right? And then you did these other healings. And that's like your soul leading you. So if moms can allow themselves that through what you were going through, you still were able to receive the nudge of the next step or the next help, right? And that it isn't always about the trauma, but it is about the process of moms now, because thank God to technology. You're in Canada, I'm in Texas, and look, we our synergy is amazing when we're together. And there is no excuse anymore. It's just the ability for moms to identify that what we go through is not normal, and not to have the support of a partner, because the partner may not understand, and we can't make them understand what our body is feeling, because we're having all these chemical reactions. Our chemical imbalance it's not in that happy place. And like for you, it was the whole pregnancy, right? So all your body was like haywire in your chemicals, not feeling happy. Then you have the baby, and then you have to deal with the after. So there it's a big calling, it's a big challenge, and it's also a big reward. Motherhood is, if we can find the tools to do it. So after you experience that, and how you received help with cognitive, and then shamanic, and then Reiki, which is, like you said, soul care. And what I want to identify here too is it went from physical care, from trauma, to like soul care, right? To really, and you said you really connected with Kundalini yoga, right?
Yes.
From that point, where did you know and when to start a business?
So when I was 20, I was the friend at the party that you just ended up spilling your guts to, right? Or your life story is like, oh, I'm with this
Okay.
guy and this is happening and I don't know what to do. And
Okay.
I just was drawn to those conversations. And I said all the time, I should be a life coach. And people are like, what the hell is that? Like this was in 2003 to 5. Like no one knew what a life coach really was back then.
Mm-hmm.
But I had heard vaguely of this term, right? And it just was
Mm-hmm.
something that stuck in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I went on through a entirely different career. I worked in HR, I worked in change management, in consulting. But in all of those fields, I was still really growing a skill set of holding space and asking important questions and really understanding somebody and their desires and like where they wanted to go, whether that was their career or with a project where we're going to take this project and really do this for the organization, or leading the organization
Mm-hmm.
as a whole. And I I thought about those professional interests and you know background that I had and skill. And then I thought about my personal passion and drive, which was starting
Mm-hmm.
to become motherhood and connecting with women on this topic. And so I started just after that paramedic said this is normal, I wrote an Instagram post about it. And that
Mm-hmm.
was the first time I had shared anything about my struggles. And I couldn't believe the response that I got from friends and family and everything. And so I was like, yeah, okay, I'm onto something. Just following the breadcrumbs, the
Mm-hmm.
nudges, the little like, ooh, I have this kind of like feeling inside. I'll just see where it goes. I'm going to express it and see where it goes. I'm going to bring that feeling out to life.
Mm-hmm.
And what do I get back? So I just started blogging, basically like these Instagram posts were the start of it. And lo and
Mm-hmm.
behold, I had made this sort of decision that I want to help moms. That's going to be my business. I'm going to help moms.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a week or two later, out of the blue, an acquaintance I knew from my MBA program years ago who lived in a different city messaged me and said, hey, I'm moving back to Winnipeg and I want to start this business for moms. It's events. Would you want to partner with me?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, that's funny. I just decided in my head I'm going to start a business to help moms. So,
Right.
yes. And that business became a events-based business of like a self-care event for moms to bring their baby to, but it wasn't your
Mm-hmm.
typical baby rhyme time, you know,
Mm-hmm.
story hour. It was mom focused. We had wine, we had a nice meal, we had, you know, photography. We were going to bring in guest speakers at our future events for
Mm-hmm.
mom issues, and it was lovely. We were featured
Mm-hmm.
on the news locally. So that was in
Really?
January of
Okay.
2020.
Okay.
Can you imagine what happened next in the events business world?
Hmm.
Yeah,
No.
the timing was
Another
a little
redirect.
unfortunate, another pivot. Yeah. And so we had this like real rush of fame, call it, and feelings of success and momentum. And okay, we're on to something. Let's build this out. And then the pandemic started. So we did flip to virtual events. That was tough. And each of us having two children of our
Mm-hmm.
own under at that time, like three, two kids
Mm-hmm.
under three each. She had a full-time job, and I was now fully into a life coaching certification. So I
Mm-hmm.
was still moving forward with that. And that was the piece I was going to bring into this business.
Mm-hmm.
So time went on, and we decided to just kind of put a pin in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I really wanted to go all in on myself and what I was doing. And so I finished my certification, and August of 2020, I launched coaching for moms. Essentially, it was
Mm-hmm.
self-care, self-awareness, healing, and life coaching for moms. And it's from that where now in closing up 2022, it's morphed into more of that combination again of the business world that I came from and the mom world, and really helping women and mothers in particular, but they don't always have to be. I do have clients who aren't mothers, but helping them create their soul aligned business. There's like their soul driven impact that they want to make in the world, and really helping them get clear on what that looks like, what the offer is, who they're helping serve, how they're going to market this, their branding, like and basically though, all the things that come up in your head when you're starting a business. And I know for me, a big part of my journey was just imposter syndrome and getting over, like I would have, so my dad, who I value his perspective on business, and I would say stuff like, I'm going to start this, or I'm going to start consulting. And he would say like, well, why would anyone pay you when there's this firm that they could hire who have all these things that they bring to the table? And so I was always kind of coming at this, like, who's going to pay me? Who would pay me? Who would want to work with me? And that was a lot that I had to deal with. And it's funny because I actually think imposter syndrome shows up in motherhood all the time and we don't realize it, right? Because I think we think sometimes that if I don't get this right, if I don't do it perfectly, I'm not good enough for my own kid.
Yes. And I love that you said that imposter syndrome with motherhood, because with my clients as well, that's a lot of I'm not good enough. And according to who, and according to, what manual are you not good enough? Where is that coming from? Right. So that plays, and that's so huge to acknowledge, because then, if they're not feeling good enough, well, how are they going to feel good enough to even start a business?
Absolutely. And the problem that I have a little bit with the self-development world, which I'm a huge advocate for, and like glad we have it because it's important, but I think it can sometimes translate to this belief of being broken and needing to be fixed. And we come into programming or listen to a podcast or whatever it is with this kind of idea of I need help because I'm broken. I need someone to fix me. And I just want to stress that it's like, these are all adaptive behaviors. You're not broken. None of us are. None of us are broken, but we've had things occur and we've had to create strategies that might not be helpful, or they stop being helpful at a certain point. But we're not broken. We just need some better tools.
Yes, absolutely. And so
and that's okay.
Right? Yes, that is okay to acknowledge that we're not broken. And actually, from the experiences that moms have, it helps us learn, like you said, if we can get the tools. And this is why I love bringing, all of you guys on here, is because to show that you got the tools, I got the tools, and here we are, right?
Yeah. And it's an ever evolving process. I mean, like this conversation happened last night with my husband. I was saying, like, I'm finding a lot of kind of challenges with my 6-year-old lately. And it's feeling like the interactions are more difficult than they are fun lately. Right. And I said, I think though what that's really saying is like, it's like growing pains as a parent, and you're starting to see, okay, the way that we used to do this doesn't work anymore. And he's changing and we need to adapt. And it's just constant. If you can look at that uncomfortable feeling as a nudge for growth instead of something to be ashamed of, or focus on the negative, you can reframe it into an opportunity to become closer with your child, to become more aware of yourself, and to practice different skills that you didn't think you needed. But our children are our biggest teachers, and they're always going to show us where we need to level up.
Yes. Oh, that's so beautiful. If also moms can learn to let go of judgment, right? They can go ahead and work through, the judgment of others, but they need to release that judgment from themselves to work on and take some type of action, right? So how did the universe give you invitations, aligned invitations? How did they help you with your direction?
Well, I just fundamentally believe that when you make an intention and it comes from that place of pure intention on, helping, or it's a soul-driven desire or wish, and you take the action towards that, the universe will support you in such beautiful ways. And so for me, that was like deciding I wanted to have this type of business and starting to create messaging around it, and then being offered this invitation from my business partner at the time to start this thing. It's shown up for me in terms of, like, again, I had said before, I think we started recording, I didn't have a great start in the fall to my business because I tore my ACL over the summer. So I took a lot of downtime. I was behind on marketing activities. And so my revenue reflected this in September. And instead of, I won't say I wasn't frustrated or discouraged. I absolutely was. But my process to these sort of things now is to sit in those feelings and see them for what they are and say, like, okay, yeah, you're feeling the pinch. You're feeling frustrated. We know why this happened. It was also necessary. So then just, okay, go, take action, right? Sit for 10 minutes and send some emails. I do that. Clients booked, money in the bank. Boom, boom, boom. Things are coming in. And I'm like, isn't that funny? So I see it time and time again. I see it not even in business, but in the opportunities that your connections and your relationships will put in front of you. You see it affirmed, and like, you honestly, I feel like spirit guides are on social media, because I'll be thinking something and feeling something, and then I'll open up Instagram and boom, there's like a quote or a message that just totally confirms it. I was like, weird, right? So I just am always looking for the signs. I'm always looking.
That's beautiful. And to the moms out there, maybe in a situation that is not productive at the moment, having, trauma, whether it be narcissistic trauma, past pain. You said something about being intentional. And I feel like with my experience with narcissistic trauma, I didn't realize that making a decision is also being intentional of what direction you're choosing to go. And I know sometimes, and like you said, it's uncomfortable, but that discomfort that you were talking about with your 6-year-old, right? And that discomfort is also leading the way to get out of that trauma, right? Which that's what happened with you. That discomfort that you were feeling was leading you out of the way of where you were. But what we're here to express and show, and we're living it, is following it.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's not enough to just wish on a star or meditate all day. As much as I wish we could, we actually have to show that we mean business, right? Or we want to change. And it could be that decision, I'm going to be, I'm going to work on my triggers, and the one decision where you take a breath before you yell as a reflex, that's a decision. That's an aligned decision.
Yes. Oh, beautiful. I love it. So before we close, do you have a tip, or you want to share anything with a free gift that you can offer? They can find you. I'm going to put the links in, so they'll have
that. I have both. I have tips. I have freebies. I have anything you want. I think that, when I retelling this story, I think something that was really pivotal for me in this time of my life was coming back to my breath. And it's funny because that was the experience in the panic attack. But for moms listening out there, I just want you to take note of how tight is your stomach clenched during the day. Because I found, like, I was walking around with my stomach held in, or like clenching because I was anxious or something. And it's amazing with just a big deep belly breath will
Mm-hmm.
do. And so at that time in my life is when I started doing this box breath, which is
Mm-hmm.
just 4 counts in, hold for 4, exhale for 4 out your mouth, and hold for 4.
Okay.
You can even try 2 if that's hard.
Mm-hmm.
But it really, like 4 of those rounds is, 16 seconds each. It's a minute.
Mm-hmm.
In
Okay.
1 minute, you can feel your blood pressure come down. You can feel your heart rate slow. You can just gain a little bit of kind of clarity in the moment. So just coming back to your breath and remembering your breath, as simple as it is, has been a really powerful practice for me.
Yeah. And I do some breathing techniques too. And breath is medicine, breath is life,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And when we are in the uncomfortable of a trauma or deciding what we want to do, and just the decision can be uncomfortable, I would suggest what Melissa's saying is take the breath. Take the breath, because the breath will take you out of what hasn't even happened. But it's, it's like concocting in the head. So take the breath and just allow yourself to be okay where you are at.
Right.
Right.
And know that all these little practices, if that felt good, you can scale that up. Set a timer on your phone next and do 2 minutes of that little breath work practice 5 times a day, right? Or like pair it with just a meditation song you love on Spotify, or I use Insight Timer. It's a free app. There's lots of guided breath work on Insight Timer as well. So it's like, just take that little first step and then see what world unfolds before your eyes, because there's so many tools that can be incorporated really easily to bring you that sense of calm and like less overwhelmed, because it, as moms, we're just dealing with that on a constant basis. So the other thing I would say too is that I actually offer now a free audio program on those negative thoughts. So it's called A Mindset for Miracles, and you can download 5 modules of an overview of what those thoughts look like, sound like, how to challenge them, what to do differently, and really start to shape your thinking into something more positive.
I love that. That's amazing. That is so amazing. Well, Melissa, like always, I really enjoy you being here, and I look forward to all the goodies that we're going to be doing together.
Yes, me too.
Right? Yeah. So I just want to let the audience know, all the moms, that we love them very much. Be more open to possibilities, to move past, transform, and then find yourself again. Till the next time.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to Neutralize the Mama Trauma podcast. If you haven't already, please hit the like and subscribe button so you don't miss any new episodes. It would also mean the world to me if you're able to take a moment and rate and review my podcast on how it was helpful to you. Also, please connect with me on my social media platforms. Thank you so much, and I hope to see you in the next episode.